Welcome to the deep dive. You know how fast things move, and right now Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is really in the spotlight. You sent over some really interesting sources on this, and it's clear there's a lot going on that we need to unpack.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like it's unfolding minute by minute almost.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try and cut through, the noise and really look at these recent reports and controversies around Secretary Hegseth, specifically the talk about him maybe being replaced.
Exactly. And you pulled together quite a mix. We've got that NPR report that got Reddit talking, articles from Politico, The Times of India, Newsweek, NPR itself, and Hegseth's Wikipedia page for some background.
Right. So our mission for you listening is to basically pull out the key pieces from all this, connect the dots, and figure out what's really at the heart of it without, getting totally overwhelmed by the 24/7 news cycle.
Okay, let's dive in. The spark really was this idea that the White House might be looking to replace Hegseth.
Yeah, that initial reporting.
So NPR kicked it off, didn't they? Citing an anonymous U.S. official.
That's right, an unnamed source. And then the Times of India picked it up, basically running with that same NPR report.
But then almost immediately you get the pushback. It's like, report deny, report deny.
Exactly. Newsweek covered the NPR story, sure, but they also highlighted the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, hitting back hard on X.
Calling it fake news, right.
Pretty much, yeah, fake news. And stressing that President Trump still had confidence in Hegseth. What's really interesting here for you is seeing that clash, the speed of news versus the need for serious security around classified stuff. Using personal devices, even encrypted ones like Signal. Well, it opens doors, potentially.
And Trump himself got involved.
Oh, yeah. Newsweek said he spoke directly with Hegseth, defended it publicly. The Times of India mentioned Trump kind of brushing off the Signal chat stuff, too, and Hegseth himself condemning the leaks.
So right away, you've got this tension. Anonymous report, very public, very forceful denial.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, what's the play behind the leak? And why such a strong, quick response from the administration?
Definitely food for thought. Okay, now, that initial NPR report mentioned this was all happening amid another controversy involving Signal chats. This seems like a really big piece of the puzzle.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It seems central. The Times of India has probably the most detail on this. The core allegation is that Hegseth shared classified military operational information using Signal.
And we're talking sensitive stuff.
Apparently, yeah. Specifics about upcoming Houthi target strikes in Yemen. Think about it like giving away the game plan before the match even starts. It could put pilots, missions, everything at way more risk.
Wow. And not just a one-on-one message?
No, that's the thing. The Times of India says it was a group chat on his personal phone. Included his wife, his brother, and his lawyer.
That's quite a group for classified military ops info.
It is. And the timing is, well, it's reportedly around the same time as another incident back in March, where he supposedly shared similar info, maybe accidentally, in a different Signal group with White House people and even a journalist.
Wait, so two separate Signal incidents?
Seems like it.
Yeah.
The New York Times also reported on that second chat, the one with family and the lawyer. And when we say classified military operational information, we mean the real nuts and bolts, how, when, where, stuff you really don't want getting out.
Okay, and the potential consequences here. The Times of India really hammered this point, right? Sharing it before strikes could put pilots in danger.
That's the major concern they highlighted. Especially, since they mentioned the Houthis have actually downed U.S. drones before, it paints a worrying picture about operational security.
So has anything official happened because of this?
Yes. The Washington Post reported that the Department of Defense Inspector General's office opened an inquiry, specifically looking into how Hegseth handled classified information in those Signal chats.
An IG inquiry. Okay, that's not nothing. That's a pretty significant step.
It shows the allegations are being taken seriously enough for an official look, definitely.
And how's this playing out, in public discussion? You mentioned that Reddit thread reacting to the initial NPR report.
Yeah, it gives you a snapshot, right? A pretty raw one. Lots of skepticism about Hegseth, lots of questions about whether he's, the right fit for the job. Some comments were pretty blunt.
Dullest blade in the shed, gin-soaked clown. Yeah, some strong opinions there.
Very strong. It reflects a certain segment, obviously, but it mirrors some wider anxieties people seem to have about his background and maybe his judgment in such a high-stakes role.
Which kind of brings us to these broader concerns beyond just the Signal stuff. Senator Jean Shaheen, for instance, the Times of India, mentioned her criticism.
Right, about his lack of experience managing, huge, complex organizations. which the Pentagon definitely is.
That seems like a pretty fundamental point for a Secretary of Defense.
It is. It takes a certain skill set, a certain depth of experience. Her comment really taps into that worry. Does he have what it takes for this specific, massive job?
And it's not just political opponents saying this. You mentioned John Elliott, former DoD spokesperson.
Yeah, in Politico magazine. He described things at the Pentagon recently as chaotic and damaging. Newsweek quoted him saying, "The building is in disarray under Hegseth's leadership."
That's a heavy critique from an insider.
It carries weight, yeah. Someone who knows the building saying things are chaotic, that gets attention.
And there was talk of internal issues, too. Departures.
That's right. The Times of India mentioned 3 advisors leaving: Dan Caldwell, Colin Carroll, Darren Selnick, apparently amid accusations about press leaks, which they denied in a joint statement.
Suggests things might be a bit tense inside the Pentagon.
Could point to some friction, yeah. Some internal discord, maybe.
And Politico also had that warning from another former official, suggesting this dysfunction could actually lead to Hegseth being pushed out.
Yeah, basically saying the internal situation and all the criticism piling up might just become too much for him to stay in the role. It's a stark warning.
And again, you see echoes of this in those Reddit comments, people questioning his basic qualifications, his leadership style. It feels like it's not just one thing, but maybe a pattern people are concerned about.
I think that's fair. And the FAQ you shared, Pete Hegseth's controversial tenure, it pulls these threads together for you, points to the lack of deep management experience, those older allegations about finances and alcohol, the current info-sharing issues, the talk of a Pentagon meltdown, his history of making controversial statements. It all adds up.
Okay, so with all that swirling around, what's the consistent line from the White House?
Denial. As we said, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has been firm, no plans to replace him. Newsweek, Times of India, they both reported her statements backing him up, stressing Trump's support.
And Trump himself, still backing him publicly.
Very much so, it seems. Newsweek reported Trump spoke with him, defended him, kind of waved away the Signal Chat issues, blamed it on disgruntled employees, I think was the phrase.
Right, so Trump's support seems absolutely key here.
It looks like the crucial factor allowing Hegseth to weather this storm, at least for now.
And Hegseth himself, is he pushing back?
Oh, yeah. The Times of India said he rejects the allegations, also blaming former staff with axes to grind. And apparently at that White House Easter event, he suggested it was all a coordinated smear campaign. That was in the Times of India and on his Wikipedia page, too.
A smear campaign. Okay. So he's framing it as an attack.
That seems to be the core of his defense strategy, yes.
Let's just quickly touch on his background for context. Wikipedia mentions his time at Fox News, right? And his military service.
Yeah, Army National Guard, deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, educated at Princeton, then Harvard. He was a Fox News contributor, yeah.
An author, too, I think.
Right. Written a couple of books, American Crusade, War on Warriors. And he was involved in political activism before becoming Secretary of Defense. A varied background, definitely.
And it's worth remembering, like that FAQ pointed out, his confirmation wasn't exactly smooth sailing, was it?
Not at all. Very narrow vote, 51-50. The vice president had to break the tie. There were those earlier allegations brought up again, sexual misconduct, financial issues, alcohol concerns.
So he came into the job already under a fair bit of scrutiny.
Absolutely. He's been a controversial figure pretty much from the start of this role.
And that FAQ, looking ahead, basically said his future is pretty uncertain, depends heavily on Trump's support.
That sums it up well. It feels precarious. Depends on whether Trump continues to back him so strongly and whether the administration can kind of ride out these controversies, especially with the IG investigation now underway.
Okay, so wrapping this all up for you listening. The big picture is Secretary Hegseth is facing some serious heat. You've got these reports denied by the White House, but persistent about a possible replacement.
It's driven largely by these really concerning allegations about sharing classified info over Signal, but also tied into these broader worries about his leadership style and, frankly, the overall functioning of the Pentagon right now.
Right. And that creates this real feeling of uncertainty. You have the official denials clashing with the ongoing reports and now an official investigation by the Inspector General. It's definitely a situation to watch.
It really is. And it leaves you with some big questions to think about, doesn't it? Like, what does all this mean for the stability of the Department of Defense, for national security? Whether Hegseth stays or goes, what are the ripple effects?
Yeah, and maybe even broader. What does this whole episode tell us about, the political climate right now? How these high-level appointments are made, how oversight works or maybe doesn't work. Lots to chew on there.